I was scrolling through job boards the other day, just for research, don't worry, and I saw a listing that it perfectly captures this modern corporate identity crisis.
Oh, yeah.
The headline was in this, friendly, bubbly font, "We prioritize employee well-being and mental health."
Ah.
And then literally 3 bullet points down, under requirements, must thrive in a high-pressure, chaotic environment and be available 24/7.
Of course. That's the corporate equivalent of serving a Diet Coke with a triple bacon cheeseburger.
Right.
It makes you feel a little better about the transaction, but, it doesn't change what's actually happening.
Exactly. And that contradiction that's our starting point today. We're doing a deep dive into Chapter 2 of the 9 to 5 Survival Guide. It's titled Workplace Welfare Because Your Mental Health Isn't a Perk.
And that title, it does a lot of heavy lifting right away. It immediately sets up the central conflict we're going to unpack.
Okay.
The difference between, say, perks.
The shiny stuff.
Yeah, the shiny stuff, the ping pong tables and free beer, and actual welfare, which is the structural support you need to just function as a human being.
Okay, but let me play devil's advocate for a second. Is there really any harm in the shiny stuff? I mean, if a company wants to give me free granola bars or put a foosball table in the break room, I'm not going to say no.
No, you wouldn't say no.
It's better than nothing, isn't it?
It is, but the source argues that companies often use those perks in place of real welfare. It's a distraction technique. Think of it this way. If you have free snacks, but you're working 60 hours a week on a 40-hour salary and you haven't slept properly in a month, that granola bar isn't a perk. It's a consolation prize.
It's a bleak way to look at it. So how does the guide define real welfare? Because that feels like a term every HR department would define differently.
Well, the source is very specific. It defines real welfare with one question, just one.
Okay, what is it?
Does the job support your ability to be a functional human? Not a happy employee, not a fulfilled soul, just a functional biological organism.
That is a shockingly low bar.
It is, isn't it? And yet, so many workplaces fail to clear it. The guide breaks this down into tangible metrics. The first one is hours.
Right.
It talks about the official versus actual gap.
Oh, I know this one. The contract says 9 to 5.
Yeah.
If you actually leave at 5 p.m., people look at you like you just insulted their grandmother.
Exactly. If leaving on time requires an apology or some big excuse, you don't have workplace welfare. You have a culture of unspoken debt. You're constantly borrowing time from your own life to pay back a debt you don't even owe.
Which leads right into the whole PTO issue.
Yeah.
I found the section on unlimited PTO fascinating because that's usually sold as the ultimate freedom.
Take as much time as you need.
Yeah, it sounds great.
It's sold as freedom, but the data and the argument in this chapter suggests it is often a trap. The guide calls it a psychological pressure tactic.
How so?
Well, when you have a set number of days, say 15 days a year, you feel entitled to them. They're part of your compensation. You own those days. But when it's unlimited, there's no baseline. You don't own anything. So what happens? We're social creatures. We look around to see what the tribe is doing.
And since everyone is afraid to look like a slacker,
Right.
nobody takes any time off.
Precisely. It becomes a race to the bottom. The text argues that real welfare needs two things for time off. One, encouragement to actually take it. And two, this is the big one, coverage.
Coverage seems like the missing link in most jobs.
It's the difference between a vacation and a postponement. I mean, if you go away for a week, but you come back to 800 unread emails and a project on fire, that wasn't a vacation. That was just hitting the pause button on your stress. The guide calls it delayed punishment.
Delayed punishment. That explains why the Sunday scaries are so much worse after a trip. You know you're walking into a disaster zone.
Right. And if we move from time to health, the guide brings up a similar issue with access, specifically with mental health resources. A lot of companies will tout a confidential assistance program.
Oh yeah, the hotline number on the poster in the break room next to the choking hazard diagrams.
That's the one. But the source asks, what is the user experience? If you call that number in a crisis and you're told there's a 6-week wait list to speak to someone, that benefit is effectively zero. It looks good on a brochure, but it fails that functional human test because a crisis doesn't wait 6 weeks.
It seems like the common thread here is the user experience.
Yeah.
The benefit exists on paper, but the actual experience of using it is just terrible.
That is a perfect way to put it. And the ultimate user experience metric is psychological safety. Can you report a problem without tanking your career? Can you make a mistake without being publicly shamed?
If the answer is no, no amount of free coffee can fix that.
No. Which brings us to the inevitable result of ignoring all this: burnout. Now, we use this word a lot. I'm burned out on Zoom calls or whatever. But the guide treats this as like a medical condition. It defines burnout as a state of chronic physical and emotional exhaustion. But the key insight here, and I think this is what people miss, is the creep.
The creep.
Yeah. Burnout isn't an event, it's a process. You don't just wake up one Tuesday suddenly unable to function. It happens slowly. The guide describes it as an erosion.
Okay.
It starts with cynicism. You find yourself rolling your eyes at emails that used to be fine. Then comes irritability.
I think we've all been there, snapping at your partner because the dishwasher wasn't loaded right, but really it's about that meeting you had at 4 p.m.
Exactly. That's the bleeding effect work bleeding into your life. But the guide warns about the red zone. This is where it gets dangerous. Physical symptoms start showing up: migraines, stomach issues, constant muscle tension. And there's a very dark, specific symptom mentioned: the fantasy of injury.
I read that part 3 times. The idea that you're driving to work and you think, if I just got into a minor fender bender, I wouldn't have to go in today.
It is a terrifying thought, but it's a desperate signal from your brain. It's your subconscious looking for an escape hatch because your conscious mind won't let you quit.
Wow.
If you are at that stage, the guide is explicit. You need immediate intervention, not a long weekend. You're in crisis.
So let's talk about the medicine. The guide prescribes mental health days, but it frames them differently than I usually hear. It says they aren't vacation days.
No, it reframes them as legitimate sick days. The argument is purely biological. The brain is an organ. If your stomach was failing, you'd stay home. If your brain is failing, anxiety, fog, depression, you are sick.
But the guilt, though, I feel like even if I accept that logically, calling in sad feels wrong when my team is busy, I feel like I need a real excuse.
And that is exactly where the source introduces the stomach issues hack. This is one of the most tactical pieces of advice in the whole chapter.
Okay, walk us through this. Why specifically stomach issues?
So if you work in a high-trust environment, you just say, "I'm not feeling well." That should be enough.
Should be.
Should be. But if you work in a toxic culture that demands reasons, you use the stomach excuse. "I'm having severe stomach issues."
Is it just because it's gross?
Partly. It shuts down the conversation immediately. No manager, no matter how much of a micromanager they are, wants to ask follow-up questions about that.
Right. Too much information.
But the second reason is that it's often medically true.
How so?
The gut-brain axis. Anxiety and stress trigger a physical response in your gut. So when you say "my stomach is in knots," you aren't even really lying. You're just describing the physical manifestation of your mental state.
That is brilliant social engineering.
Sure.
Okay, so you've called in, you've used the hack. What are the rules for the day off? Because I'm guilty of checking email on sick days.
The guide is strict here. Total disconnection. If you check email just to see, you've invalidated the day. The goal is to reset your nervous system.
Right.
For some people, that means hiking. For others, it means staring at the ceiling. Both are valid. The only invalid activity is work.
Let's pivot from the mental to the physical, because the guide makes a point that I think gets overlooked. The modern office is physically dangerous.
It is. We don't think of office work as manual labor, but sitting in a static position for 8-10 hours, it places massive stress on the body. The guide talks about tech neck, and I want to get into the physics of this because it's not just a buzzword.
Yeah, I always thought tech neck was just something parents said to get their kids off iPads.
It is a leverage problem. Your head weighs about 10 to 12 pounds. When your ears are aligned with your shoulders, your spine supports that weight efficiently.
Okay, but that makes sense.
But for every single inch your head tilts forward to look at a laptop screen, the weight of your head on your spine effectively doubles due to torque.
Wait, really? Doubles?
By the time you're at a 45-degree angle, which is pretty standard for looking down at a laptop on a desk, you're putting about 40 to 60 pounds of pressure on your neck.
That is like carrying an 8-year-old child on your neck all day long.
Exactly. So that headache you get at 3 p.m., that isn't just stress, it's mechanical failure. Your muscles are exhausted.
That puts the recommendation for a laptop riser in a whole new light. It's not about comfort, it's about not destroying your spine.
Correct. The guide says, screen at eye level or nothing. If you're working off a laptop, get a riser and an external keyboard. It's not optional.
And what about the chair? The guide mentions the 90-degree rule.
Feet flat on the floor, knees at 90 degrees. And here is a litmus test for your employer that I loved. If they won't pay for a decent chair that supports your spine, that is a massive red flag.
It's such a basic ask.
Think about it. A carpenter gets a hammer. A surgeon gets a scalpel. An office worker needs a chair. It is a basic tool of the trade. If they won't provide it, they're telling you exactly how disposable you are.
The guide also throws in the 20-20-20 rule for eyes. I try to do this, but tell us why it actually works.
Every 20 minutes, look at something 20 feet away for 20 seconds. It works because the little ciliary muscles in your eyes contract to focus on close objects, like a screen. They literally lock into that position. Looking away forces them to relax. It breaks the muscle lock. It's simple, but it prevents long-term vision problems.
Okay, so we've covered the body and the brain. Now let's talk about the defense system against the organization itself.
Yeah.
Boundaries. The chapter opens this section with a pretty cynical statement. Employers will take everything you are willing to give.
It sounds cynical, but the author argues it's just systemic. Organizations are their engines designed to consume resources to create output, and you are the resource.
Right.
If you don't install a governor on that engine, it will run until it overheats. It isn't personal, it's just mechanical.
So we have to train them.
We teach people how to treat us. That is the core message. If you answer an email at 10 p.m. on a Tuesday, you've just signed a social contract that says, I am available at 10 p.m. on Tuesdays. You might think you're being helpful or showing dedication, but you're actually setting a really dangerous precedent.
But walking that back is terrifying. If I'm already the yes man, how do I start saying no without looking like I'm checking out? I feel like if I suddenly stop answering, I'm going to get fired.
You frame it around performance. That is the key. You don't say, I want my evenings back because I want to watch Netflix.
Even though that's true.
Even though it's true. You say, to ensure I'm sharp for the morning brief, I'm disconnecting at 6 p.m. to recharge. You make your rest part of your productivity strategy.
Ah, okay.
You're speaking the language of the business. I am protecting the asset in me so I can produce better work for you.
That is so smart. It turns a no into a yes for the company.
Exactly. And then you have to be consistent. If you cave once, you reset the training.
This feels like a good segue to analyzing the environment itself. The guide lists red flags and green flags to help us figure out if we're in a place that even allows boundaries. And there's one red flag that is basically a meme at this point.
Yes.
We are a family.
The ultimate red flag. The guide translates "we are a family" to mean we expect unconditional loyalty and sacrifice from you, but we will make cold business-based decisions about you.
It's emotional manipulation to extract unpaid labor.
Essentially, I mean, think about what a family is. A family loves you unconditionally. A business employs you conditionally. When a company uses family language, they're blurring that line so you feel guilty asking for a raise.
Or taking a vacation.
Exactly. Real families don't lay you off to hit a quarterly target.
That is a brutal but necessary distinction. What are some other red flags they mention?
Urgency culture, where everything is an emergency. If everything is priority number one, then nothing is a priority. And public criticism. If you see leaders shaming people in meetings, get out.
On the flip side, what's a green flag? Because I feel like we rarely see them.
They do exist. A huge one is leadership modeling behavior. If your boss actually takes a 2-week vacation and doesn't check email, that is a massive green flag.
Why is that so important?
Because it signals that the system is robust enough to survive without one person's constant input. It means the place is well managed. If the boss can't leave without the place falling apart, that's a huge sign of instability.
So let's say a listener is hearing all this and realizing, okay, I'm in a red flag factory. The guide has a section on advocacy, but it also mentions an exit strategy.
Right. Advocacy comes first. You try to improve the conditions. You use we language. We would work better if we had no meeting Fridays. You make the business case. But the guide is realistic. Sometimes the culture is too rotten to fix.
And that's where the idea of the safety net comes in.
You cannot advocate effectively if you are desperate. If you need the specific paycheck to survive next week, you have no leverage. You will always fold. The guide advises building an emergency fund, not just for financial health, but for psychological leverage.
Knowing you could leave changes how you negotiate.
Precisely. The text alludes to Chapter 7 as the final option, which in this context implies leaving. If you've advocated, set boundaries, and nothing changes, you have to acknowledge a values mismatch. You aren't failing. The environment is failing you.
Bringing this all together, what's the one thing you want the listener to take away from this chapter?
That workplace welfare is a baseline, not a bonus. You shouldn't be grateful that your job doesn't destroy your health. That is the minimum requirement for a sustainable economic exchange. If a job destroys you, it isn't a job, it's extraction.
It really is a shift in mindset. We're so used to saying thank you for the crumbs.
Correct, and we need to stop.
I want to leave everyone with a thought from the source that really shook me. We talked about the fantasy of injury earlier, but the guide asks another question that hits so hard. Have you ever felt a twinge of jealousy when a coworker got the flu, just because they got to stay in bed?
If the answer is yes, your body is screaming at you.
If you are jealous of the flu, it's time to make a change. Go check your chair height, take a mental health day if you need it, and remember, you are the only asset you truly own. Thanks for diving in with us.
Take care.